Hello viewers and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 Conquest video production. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm pleased to present a triad of new Tau faction card spoilers, each from our upcoming Planetfall cycle war pack, Boundless Hate. These cards were recently spoiled in a post-holidays article courtesy of Team Covenant, so here's giving thanks to not just Fantasy Flight Games for providing our community with this latest new round of previews, but thanks also to the indefatigable efforts of the crew over at Team Covenant as well for serving up the images I'll be using in this video today. But with all that covered, here's an introduction to and my initial impressions of each of our upcoming Tau faction cards. In this article, we see a sum total of 2 spectacular new army units as well as an intriguing and compelling novel attachment. First up, let's begin with the economy-centric army unit Exploratory Drone. For the cost of just 1 resource, this loyal icon-possessing army has 1 command icon, an attack value of 2, as well as a pool of 2 hit points. It has the drone trait and reaction. After a non-Tau unit is deployed at this planet, move this unit to an adjacent planet. So, this is a deceptively straightforward unit. At first blush, it seems like a non-limited, more expensive, less effective, albeit slightly more durable version of our core set recon drones. However, whereas your opponent can deploy units at the same planet as reside your recon drones until they eventually surpass your sum total present number of command icons, the instant that your opponent deploys any non-Tau unit at the same planet as is positioned your exploratory drone, if it appears favorable to do so, then you can opt to relocate this unit to an adjacent planet. So, whereas any other 1 command icon unit may end up stuck, sitting opposite an enemy 2 command icon unit, doing absolutely nothing for you in failing to generate you any additional cards or resources during the command phase. Instead, the exploratory drone can move to some other, necessarily adjacent planet, either one entirely empty and devoid of enemy command icons, or alternatively, it can move to a planet where it can contribute to your already standing and established command presence. So, through the simple movement of this unit in response to enemy army unit deployment, you could go from what would have been losing a command struggle to either winning one yourself, albeit at a different planet, or perhaps your exploratory drone instead serves simply to block your opponent from winning an additional command struggle, which otherwise would have happened at one of those adjacent planets. Plus, there's no limit to the number of times that you can trigger this optional reaction during any given phase or game round, and its triggering condition does not specify that it only keys off of enemy units being deployed to its planet. So, between you and your opponent taking alternating turns deploying non-Tau faction units, it's entirely possible that you could move your exploratory drone all the way from Planet 5 to Planet 1 or vice versa. Plus, though it may under normal circumstances not be worth putting in quite so much special deployment effort just to end up relocating one individual 1 command icon no attack value economy unit, if it just so happens that you take opportunistic advantage of perhaps using ambush platform in order to drop an attachment onto the exploratory drone and, as a result, end up transforming it immediately into an unexpected, albeit respectably powerful combatant, then it just might be worth deploying a string of rogue traders or void pirates in a line just to make sure that you can relocate your now battle-capable drone to some important or even decisive combat. Plus, the 1 command icon itself isn't much, as this unit itself itself is not limited, it's therefore a perfect target for promotion, and 3 repositionable command icons is a very appealing prospect indeed. Also, ideally, once your opponent has already passed during the deploy phase, you can trigger its repositioning ability by deploying one of your own units, deliberately relocating your exploratory drone so that you can end up seizing control of a command struggle you were otherwise destined not to win. And still further, if you're playing as Commander Starblaze, your deck will likely be composed of a tremendous number of non-Tau faction units, as each and every Astra Militarum army unit you deploy will be a perfectly eligible triggering condition, in response to which you can relocate this unit. And of course, neutral units too clearly exist outside of the Tau faction, and therefore serve as a very convenient means for helping to shift the ultimate position of this unit. And though it isn't often to happen, the Exploratory Drone also potentially benefits from several different devious card interactions. For instance, if a non-Tau unit ends up deployed at its planet during combat, your drone is readily able to move away from that battle. For example, if your opponent has your exploratory drone pinned down and it seems as though it's going to end up destroyed, if you're playing as Commander Starblaze and happen to possess a copy of Staging Ground in your HQ, then you can deploy any 2 or lower cost Astra Militarum or faction-neutral unit in order to shift your drone safely away from combat. Alternatively, if your opponent is the one to take advantage of Staging Ground, that too provides you with the exact same opportunity. And remember that each and every time a unit is ambushed into play, whether it's one of your own eager recruits, should you end up allied with the Space Marines faction, or perhaps otherwise an ennui prelate, should you happen to be playing as An-Shi, or instead, perhaps you maybe encounter something along the lines of an enemy Clavex war leader or Shadowed Thorns pillager. If your exploratory drone would otherwise end up contributing absolutely nothing to combat because of its intrinsic 0 printed attack value, then you may as well end up protecting your investment, moving away your unit, and therefore in doing so set yourself up favorably in regard to command for the following round, because not only can you maybe spare the life of this unit, but you can therefore ensure it won't be swept up into your HQ had it been sitting at the first planet and you found yourself as the victor in combat. Therefore, you'll need not have a 0 attack value economy unit arrive at a planet during the following round's command phase exhausted, only to proceed to contribute next to nothing for the entire remainder of that round. So, altogether, this is an intriguing new option for building a strong Tau economy, and though it isn't exactly inexpensive for a relatively low-value command unit, it's nevertheless exceptionally stubborn, and in some sense, even more elusive than a traditional mobile keyword unit, though the exploratory drone is easily dispatched by a determined hunting enemy warlord. All the same, our latest drone does have more than one hit point, which results in it being reasonably resilient in the face of direct damage style card effects. So, overall, it is certainly versatile, and as a drone, it's not only fetchable thanks to the tutoring effect of the Earthcast Technician, but further, should your opponent end up fortunate enough to ultimately destroy it, you can proceed to simply return it from your discard pile to the top of your deck thanks to a repair bay. It's yet another option to reinforce the already respectable Tau faction command presence, and for this, and for each of these cards, do let me know in the comments what your own thoughts and opinions are, as well as what possible combos and synergies these units and cards inspire you to dream up. I think another great use for this unit might be to ensure that you can always derive at least least some benefit from Commander Shadowsun's attachment affixing reaction. Perhaps if you feel forced to send her as your warlord to a combat-irrelevant planet, perhaps in pursuit of some desirable battle ability, or otherwise simply to trump the enemy command, and in doing so, provided your exploratory drone is sitting at that same planet, you can set up a bit of equipment being then affixed to this drone trait unit, only to prepare it for possible participation in some subsequent important upcoming combat. But next up, we see our second of two total army units in the Prudent Fire Warriors. For 2 resources, they have no command icons, though they have 2 attack value, as well as 3 printed hit points. They have the Soldier trait and Interrupt. When this unit leaves play, attach each attachment on it to a target eligible unit at this planet. So, pending playtesting, this could be one hell of a card, and is most definitely going to present your opponent with very difficult decisions when it comes to the order in which they attempt to expunge a planet of your units. This army unit does have no command icons, but it has slightly better than average combat phase relevant statistics relative to its requisite investment. It swings for a base value of 2, but is quite durable at 3 hit points, and when you're playing Tau, you presumably run myriad various attachments. A Shadowsun stealth cadre augments this unit considerably, instantly transforming it into a 4 attack value and 5 hit point unit, and an ion rifle is an extraordinarily affordable means of renovating this unit, instantly turning it into a veritable monster in regard to its damage output. And perhaps the most dangerous and effective attachment thus far discussed, a copy of gun drones affixed to the Prudent Fire Warriors provides a very efficient means of potentially doling out tremendous numbers of damage tokens to all present standing opposition. But despite its entirely non-existent command phase value, this unit absolutely shines when it comes to granting you persisting benefit from attachments. Equipment style cards are fantastic, but the instant their attached unit leaves play, you abruptly cease to derive any and all benefit from that additional investment. However, should your opponent end up killing off a copy of Prudent Fire Warriors augmented by 1 or more attachments, you simply serve to reattach each and every attachment it had upon a single other eligible unit at the same planet. So perhaps your enemy was afraid of the 5 total attack value boosted up from this unit's base of 2 thanks to the assistance of an ion rifle. The instant this unit leaves play, whether through being destroyed, returned to hand, or otherwise being discarded or even sacrificed, that same bit of equipped war gear ends up immediately affixed to one of your other present units. Or perhaps if your opponent prioritizes killing off this unit just because it's threatening to fire off an affixed copy of gun drones, which of course confer the keyword area effect too, then even if you don't possess the initiative token or a ranged unit so that you can benefit from area effect prior to your opponent being able to react and counter you, you may nevertheless end up being able to fire off that very attachment. Because even if your opponent does end up killing off your Prudent Fire Warriors, and mind that thanks to shield cards it may well end up surviving unexpectedly and much to your opponent's chagrin, then that very same copy of gun drones could suddenly end up affixed to another eligible unit you control at that planet, something which could spell certain defeat for your opponent in essentially ensuring you'll be able to snap off at least 1 AE2 volley. The obvious pitfall of this unit, however, is that in traditional combat, it is definitely going to be somewhat of a low priority and last resort target for your opponent, because if it's being augmented by a copy of Shadowsun's Stealth Cadre, for instance, your opponent will simply opt to kill off, when possible, all of your other present army units, as opposed to chewing through the additional hit points conferred by that army unit / attachment more times than is absolutely necessary. Plus, though the Prudent Fire Warriors ability will still trigger in response to its outright destruction, such as through Klavek's War Leader or as the result of any number of different direct damage style card effects, such as Gleeful Plague Beast, note that an Archon's Terror or Inquisitorial Fortress, any kind of card with the ability to simply remove this unit from a planet entirely, is probably the absolutely ideal counter to this unit. And should Aatrox Prime or a Doom or Warp Storm end up destroying your Prudent Fire Warriors while they reside in your HQ, then, as your unit is not at a planet, it will have no opportunity whatsoever to transfer control of any of its affixed attachments. And clearly, when it is wielding some manner of equipment, you definitely do want it deployed alongside other friendly attachment receipt eligible units. So it's undeniably a bit of a shame whenever we happen to see units exhibiting an utter dearth of any and all printed command icons, but by no means does that prevent this from being a very compelling unit. I think it's definitely worth considering as well that you need not feel artificially limited to restricting yourself to only combat-relevant attachments, as the Prudent Fire Warriors are a perfect target upon which to affix a copy of Promotion, and when they end up leaving play, you can simply transfer control of that economy-relevant attachment to any of your other present units. Especially considering our next upcoming card spoiler, attachments definitely don't seem to be going out of style anytime soon, and as we stand only to see all the more attachment options in time, this unit is destined only to become all the stronger with each and every subsequent expansion. This effect even works with signature attachments, provided that the Fire Warriors themselves are indeed eligible, such as Commander Shadowsun's Command Link Drone, as well as the incredibly pressuring Searing Burst Cannon associated with Commander Starblaze. And, as is the case with either of those attachments, provided that you have your Fire Warriors fighting alongside your Warlord, then, thanks to their 7 or 6 HP reservoirs respectively, those signature cards are generally at least one attachment you'll need never worry about your Warlord not being able to equip, should your commanding officer happen to be the only other unit present fighting alongside your Prudent Fire Warriors. Because it seems like it would be an absolute tragedy whenever an attachment-wielding copy of your warriors is killed, only to have any and all carried equipment being unceremoniously dumped into your discard pile conventionally and entirely ineffectually. Plus, these Fire Warriors make the event even the odds, which transfers attachments between units far more powerful than ever it was before, as you can not only transfer equipment between units from planet to planet, but thanks to these Fire Warriors, also from them, upon their death, to another standing and eligible unit. And, though I've not mentioned it thus far, suffice it to say that these make Commander Shadowsun's attachment recurring reaction itself far more valuable than ever before, because in the context of Prudent Fire Warriors, you might actually be doing the equivalent of returning an attachment from your discard pile to more than just one unit. Plus, though this common unit may not appear of much use as of yet in a Space Marines or Eldar faction deck, should either of those factions end up coming across across more powerful and useful attachments of their own at any point in our future, then that is definitely something which can change very quickly. But last, though by no means least, and something which works perfectly as a follow-up to our Fire Warrior discourse, we see our third card. And what would be more appropriate for Tau than a new attachment? It is the Auxiliary Armor. For the cost of 2, it has 2 printed shield icons as well as a loyal icon. It has the war gear and armor traits with the text attached to an army unit. Attached unit gets +2 attack and +1 HP. If attached unit is a non-Tau faction unit, it gains +1 command icon. So this is the 4th 2-shield icon card we've thus far seen for Tau, and therefore it's always worth at least giving some consideration because of that powerful inherent defensive value. But seeing as how the 1-cost 1-shield icon +3 attack bonus ion rifle is an absolute Tau faction staple regardless of Warlord, I could easily see the auxiliary armor functioning very similarly. Granted, it costs twice as much and only confers +2 attack value, but it isn't always necessary to have monumental stockpiles of attack in order to successfully dispatch opponents. And though HP isn't exactly as alluring or provocative perhaps as is an outright attack bonus, the more individual rounds of combat a unit can endure, the more attacks it serves to output, and based on my personal experience with Conquest, it somehow seems like each and every additional hit point a unit serves to possess can make it dramatically more difficult to destroy, whereas the difference between 3 and 2 attack value doesn't exactly feel quite as significant as would a similar shift or boost in HP. So perhaps you do decide to save ion rifles for ranged units, which are usually fragile, but which provide you with the utmost benefit when allowed to front-load a large amount of attack. And instead, you can simply affix your copies of auxiliary armor to units that are more likely to participate in traditional combats, units that don't possess the luxury of attacking during the range skirmish round, and therefore which need to stay present upon the tabletop for as long as is possible so that they can attack prior to their being eliminated. But in a pinch, this certainly works on any of your eligible units, most definitely including those with ranged. And considering that this provides its absolute greatest benefit when attached to a non-Tau faction unit, this can not only help Commander Starblaze to capitalize upon his inter-faction synergy, but this could also be a very unexpected, albeit entirely reasonable means of transforming your factionless, neutral, economy-friendly card or resource bonus units into reasonably formidable combatants themselves. For instance, if you have a Void Pirate opposite an opponent's Rogue Trader, by playing this attachment you can not only trump your opponent during the command struggle, having gained that additional individual command icon, but further, should the opponent's Warlord attempt to assassinate your financial bonus conferring unit, you'll potentially be able to attack back, with 2 additional attack value presumably augmented up from 0, and you'll also serve to derive benefit from that additional point of HP. And should you be playing Commander Shadowsun, this is a card, just like Heavy Marker Drone, which you can readily discard as a shield, yet in doing so rest full well knowing that you can simply serve to subsequently recur this attachment afterward, back into play affixed to any eligible unit, allowing you to derive benefit from its conventional intended effect. So this seems like a very well-balanced card, and one which opens up a wealth of new options for each existing Tau faction warlord. It lets An-Shi deal out still more Armorbane keyword damage, and also serves to make those fragile ethereals and their servile underlings all the more durable. desirable, but it also contributes to making Commander Starblaze's inter-faction command phase proficiency appear all the more prodigious and insurmountable to nearly any opponent. So, the auxiliary armor is additionally ambush platform eligible and is obviously fantastic when placed upon the aforementioned Prudent Fire Warriors. This card serves only to make the Tau faction stronger, more resilient, and more stubborn to pick apart and destroy than ever it was before. It helps them in combat, it contributes to their already respectable command, and for all those reasons and more, I wholeheartedly recommend experimentation with this new attachment. And if it just so happens you're playing as Commander Shadowsun, with your chosen allied faction being Space Marines, it could even serve to make the Fire Drake Terminators or Blood Angels veterans stand to become all the more nightmarish an obstacle for your opponent to ever hope to overcome. So be sure to let me know in the comments what your own opinion is regarding our latest round of exciting new spoilers, because each of these cards certainly stands to open up a whole host of new options for not just the Tau, but also each of their alignment-eligible factions. But now that we've covered our upcoming Boundless Hate cards, I'll just conclude this video by saying thank you once again to Fantasy Flight Games for providing our community with this triad of previews, and of course a very well-deserved thanks to the hard-working crew at Team Covenant for hosting the images I used in this video today. Again, be sure to share your personal opinion and sentiments regarding each of these upcoming new cards in the comments, and as always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, or if you are already subscribed, you're always encouraged to share this content, as the more viewers there are that stumble upon these videos, the more individuals there will be that end up exposed to Conquest, the more people we may have join our community, and together we all send an increasingly powerful message to Fantasy Flight Games telling them to continue to support this fantastic product. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me, I would very much encourage you to do so through Facebook or on Twitter, and if you ever feel so inclined to donate, contribute, or otherwise support the Hive Tyrant, I would be absolutely honored and humbled were you to make a donation to my Patreon. But once again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come.